Okay, last time we went through some of this panel drawing, we were working on our first elevation view, which we pretty much got completed. We're going to go through and we're going to go ahead and make the second elevation view, which will be facing the opposite direction in the room. So it's going to be very, very similar to the one we just did, but instead of 3 doors, we're going to be dealing with 2. Um, One other thing that we're going to be, we already did that, right? We already put the reveals in the panels in the plan view, so we don't have to do that again here. But what I'm going to do is just like the first elevation view, I'm going to make a copy of the plan view here and use it as a guide for us to be able to construct our elevation view. So first things first, as soon as I get into this, what I like to do is start making my construction lines off of that plan view. So I'm going to go straight down and just go far enough to the point where it's going to be over or, past where my elevation view is going to sit. So just like that. I'm going to move these lines over to here and just copy and paste all the way throughout. There we go. And we'll just copy these throughout just like this, just like last time. So I'm going a little bit faster around this time since we just did this. But yeah, really, really important. Always make sure to use those construction lines. It's going to help you make sure you're accurate in your drawing and making sure that everything turns out exactly how it's shown from one view to the next. Now from there, because we have our elevation view over here on the left already drawn, what we can do is we can draw construction lines off of that elevation view to get the heights off of that view. Really is kind of a neat way to do that because once you draw one, it makes things go way faster for the other one. So, okay, so like what I am doing here is copying those horizontal construction lines across. Then what you want to do from there is you're going to start to clean these up a bit. So right here, I know this is the top of my elevator doors. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim that to the openings where the elevator is going to sit. So really, that's going to be about here and about here. So I'm going through where the elevator jams are, and there's only 2 on this wall, so that makes things a little bit easier. All right, so I can trim the majority of these lines out of here. So that just leaves that one, which is going to be the top of the jam. All right. Let's see, what else do we need? What else do we need? So we know that these lines go all the way across that entire elevation. So right away, what I can do is I can trim these lines out. Whoops, sorry, I can trim these lines out to about there, just like this. And same deal with the base trim too. I mean, we can just kind of clean up anything outside of what we know we don't need. So like that goes away, that goes away. Actually, the base trim is going to go all the way to the wall. So that reveal, this double line here is going to eventually form the reveal between the panel and the wall. So that base trim does need to go all the way to the edge of the wall, just like this. That's the same thing as when you're dealing with cabinets too. We did talk about that a little bit. Cabinets, the base trim is going to go all the way left to right. That is pretty consistent in the work. And same thing here with panels. We're going to run that base the exact same way, just like that. One thing that is kind of weird, yeah, because like it kind of contradicts what I just said, but like these are portal panels. These panels, according to the drawing we have here from the architect, these do not have base trim under them. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop the base trim before that portal panel starts. So really, like just like what we did on our first elevation view, we're going to match that same detail here. So we're going to trim that back to there. And then same deal with this side too. If I remember right, I believe that portal also does not have base trim under it. Yep, that is correct. Oh, but hold on, I didn't draw that portal in. I forgot a construction line when I went through and did these. So let's add that in, just like this. Okay, so we're showing the portal at the front and the back of that elevator lobby now. Let's see, what else can we do? we're going to trim these lines back. And that one's already trimmed back, so we're good on that. This is kind of representing the ceiling for now. Although looking at the ceiling in this room, you can see that it does stagger because we got a lower ceiling here where the portal is. And also over here, lower ceiling here. And then above that, there's a standard height for the ceiling right there. And then there's these little light coves that stick up past that, the front and back of the elevator lobby. So we need to look at that later. And I want to save that for a little bit once we get through cleaning up these views. Then we can take a look at that and figure out what to do there. So moving on though. So like what we did last time, I believe what we did was trim all these reveals so that they kind of all had clean looks on the inside. We're going to do the same thing here. We are going to trim all of these up. Boop, boop. Okay, just like this. Oh, not like that. Trim all these up just like this. Okay, this one, I think what we did was I traded this one a little differently because this is, if I remember right, there is a metal piece that goes up and around this elevator opening. And just to confirm, let's go back to our original. And yes, that is exactly what's happening there. So we're going to match that detail here too. All right. So I'm going to trim these lines back to there. Trim that line back to there. Probably didn't need to trim all of that. Probably still need a little bit of this over here because we're going to do the same thing on this elevator as well. Yeah, so trim and trim. Boop, boop. And boop, boop. Okay. Now, let's go back to our reveals. We're going to continue to clean those up. Let's see. Did we have a reveal straight across? Yes, we did. Okay. I must not have, either I trimmed a line too quickly or I must have, yeah, it's exactly what happened. I trimmed a line too early. That was my mistake. So I need to drop that back in. And same with over here. There is a horizontal reveal that sits there. We did add that in, even though, oh no, I'm sorry, we added a different one in before because we were running into an issue. Oh, we didn't, I'm sorry, but we were going to. So I gotta figure that out later. These panels are kind of tall, so the need of having a horizontal reveal in the middle somewhere is probably going to be the case. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna continue to trim these up. Anywhere there's a reveal, just break out those excess lines just like this, like that. Kind of the same deal all the way around. Once you get to the end, then what's left here is we're going to trim these lines down to the ceiling. You can do the same thing for that for right now. And what we should be left with is something very similar to what we had over here. The only thing that we don't have right now is I didn't include this line in the middle of the doors, so we need to add that as well. Oh, and trim out the base trim that's sitting inside of the elevator doors right now because that wouldn't be there. So let's trim that back to where the elevator opening would be, there and there. Okay. All right. That's looking much better. Okay. So now we're looking pretty on track with what we should be expecting to see. Oh, let's trim these reveals up to here too. Man, I just keep finding things as I'm looking at this. We need to clean this up. Okay. That's a little better. Just triple check and make sure I didn't forget anything else. I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, I think we're good there. Okay, so for the time being, let's call that elevation view done. I'm going to place this over here, and we'll move it just a little bit past our current elevation, and then I'm going to stack all of these together in the elevation area down below. These extra plan views, I don't need them anymore. They can go away. And yeah, elevation view wise, the only thing left that we need to do before we dimension and tag and detail out some more of the information is I want to go ahead and figure this little ceiling detail out. This is going to be a little bit different. These panels will just go flat across to the ceiling, and there'll usually be like a little 3/4 reveal between the panel and the ceiling itself. Now this one has a little bit of a different, this one looks a little different because it kind of zigzags around. But just because it does that doesn't mean it's so scary. We're going to work through it though, because like I do want to make sure this is right. So the first place I would look for something like that is going to be on what's called the reflected ceiling plan. Usually if you're trying to find something on a ceiling or trying to find out like something to do with the heights of the ceiling or what's the material up on the ceiling, if you're looking for additional details or information like that, 9 times out of 10, the architect's going to have that on what's called the reflected ceiling plan or the RCP. Fortunately for us, our RCP is on the same page as our drawing that we're working off of, so that makes things a little easier. You can see on the veneer portal at the beginning of the elevator, they have the ceiling height at 13 foot 1. At the other side of the elevator lobby, they have the veneer portal at 12 foot 11 and a half. Kind of silly, but I did notice that earlier on too, because as you can see here, this reveal is in line with that ceiling there, and this side does not align, which is weird. Usually they want them to align, but you know, it's their choice to do that. So what we're going to do then is we're going to take a look at what's going on in the middle of the room. So you can see there's two heights called out. So the middle of the room is called out at 14 foot 6 above finished floor. At the outside of the room, we have 15 feet above finished floor. This is all drywall. When you see that PT01, that's basically all it's saying is that's drywall, and that's fine. Really, there's nothing there that we have in our scope. So really what we're going to be doing is just kind of taking that into account, that there is a drywall ceiling above where we're working here. So now that we have that information, we can kind of work together to figure out, okay, now what do I do with that? How do I draw that into my elevation view? So what I want to do is kind of focus on the height of these two portals first, and then work my way into the main part of the elevator lobby. So looking at the portal on the back of the elevator lobby, the shorter one at 12 foot 11 and a half, that would be, let's see, just doing the math here, that would be 155.5 inches. That is on, just looking at this, if you need some reference here, this is a wider portal and this is a narrower portal. So the narrower portal at the back is the one that's shorter than 2. So it kind of makes it easier to remember. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line straight up from my floor line at 155.5 or 12 foot 11 and a half, and then take a line straight across like this. You can now delete that line, that's just not needed anymore. And you can trim all of these back to here, trimming that to there. Also maybe clean this up a little bit too, because realistically, if you're looking at the elevation view and the architectural, you can kind of see how that zigzags just like this. And that's kind of what we're doing here. More like this one here. Sorry, I was trying to find the exact one. So yeah, so we've got that zigzagged on this side. Let's go ahead to the other side of our elevator lobby and we'll do the exact same thing on this corner here too, or this portal. So 155.5. Draw a line straight across just like that. Delete the original height line that we don't need anymore. And, oh, whoops. See, I kind of goofed this up too. This should really, there's no reveal here. That was my mistake. We'll get rid of that. All right, knew something looked off there. But sometimes when you're drawing, you find mistakes as you go. So this is part of the game. What I'm going to do now is trim this line and this line. And then I'm going to go and trim that. And I'm going to trim this back to here. Okay, one sec. I'm sorry. To there. Okay. So we've got the two narrower portals trimmed to the exact height they need to be. Let's go and do the wider portals next. So again, just to recap a little bit, we did talk about these wider portals earlier on in the drawing, These two are unique because they're going to be on a separate drawing. They're part of our P3 drawing series, which is all these portals that are in the lobby of the building. They got grouped in with that just because they show the same exact details as the portals out in the lobby. And so with that being said, we are going to draw them into our print, but we're not going to go into a high level of detail with them like we would if we were planning on building them here as part of this print. We'll still show that they exist and still show the majority of the details that we need to show, but we're going to kind of almost gray it out in a way to show that it's there, but it's not important to this drawing. All right, so the wider portal is dimensioned at 13 foot 1, which would be 157. And it looks like that is perfectly lined up with the top of our reveal. And I believe, looking at the architectural here, if it zooms in, yep, that is exactly what they want. So we did a decent job with that. Now that we know that that is aligned, let's trim up these lines and we'll get everything squared away. So these go away. Oops, sorry, that goes to there. All right, and we're going to do the exact same thing on this corner then too. So get those lines out of there. We don't have any reveals in this panel. All right, but if you want to do, we'll draw a line straight up again, just like before at 157, or going back, that was the 13 foot 1 that's shown here. And then we're going to draw a line straight across to there, which again does line up with the top of her reveal, so that's exactly what we want to see. And then we're going to trim all these lines back to where they need to go. Pretty much like that. All right, so our portals are drawn at the right heights. Now that we have that, we need to draw the ceiling inside the elevator lobby. So a couple things I want to look at. One we already did was the heights that are here. We know that the light cove is at 15 feet above finished floor, and the main ceiling in there is 14 foot 6 above finished floor. Looking at some of the RCP drawing here, you can see there's actually like a small section that's called out here on page A711. I don't currently have that pulled up, so I'm going to open that drawing here out of the architectural folder. A711, if I can find it. That's what it said, right? A711, view 3. Let me find it here. Don't tell me they forgot to include it. Well, I don't see it here exactly. So what I'm going to do is go into the archive folder and see if maybe there's an old version of it, because there's a chance that maybe there's a possibility that maybe it never made its way into the folder by mistake. If I can't find it here, oh, there it is right there. Okay, never mind. If I can't find it there, then like I can always ask the project manager to see if they have a more updated drawing of this. It probably wouldn't be such a bad idea just to make sure we're dealing with the most current information. But because there is one there, and granted, it is in the archive folder, so you don't want to use it 100% as like, hey, this is exactly what we want. But because there isn't a more updated one in the folder, I take it that probably the architect probably didn't update all their drawings, I'm going to guess. So what we're going to do then is let's go back to our elevator lobby, and we're looking for view 3 on 711. View 3 is right here. And then it's funny because it says to go to A740 for this detail, which is kind of what I'm looking for here. Now, I do have A740 in the current folder, and that would be this detail up here. So what they're showing is they have a 6-inch gap between the low ceiling and the light cove. And when we go to draw that, we need to make sure that we incorporate that. That's going to be really important. They also show that there's a 6-inch clear dimension from the light pocket, so the bottom of the light pocket to the ceiling above in that light cove. And granted, these are all parts of the drywall or scope, but I still want to make sure it's drawn accurately in our sake. or for our sake. So I'm going to keep this up on the side and probably split this with my elevation view so I can kind of look at both of these and get a good idea of what it is I'm dealing with. Oh, sorry. Okay. So kind of flipping back and forth here. Okay. So there's our 6-inch gap. Zooming in there, you can kind of see that's where that would be right there. And then our 6-inch height dimension would be in here. So we also know the heights of the ceiling based on the reflected ceiling plan. So maybe what I want to do first is kind of detail out those lines. I'll do the same thing like what we did with the portals. I'm going to go and draw a line straight up from the floor, and I'm going to go 14'6", which is going to be the lower ceiling in the room at 174 inches tall. All right, and I'm just going to drag that all the way across both of my elevation views. So that's the lower ceiling line. I might even put that on a different layer or change the color of it. That way it stands out as a different, like I'm using it as a construction line, and there's a lot of lines going on, so I don't want it to get buried. Moving on to the other one here, that 15-foot dimension, let's do the exact same thing. I'm going to draw a line from the floor up 15 feet or 180 inches. Okay, and that is in line with the top of our panels currently. So that's kind of where we want to be anyway. That way we can kind of then figure this out from there. Okay, so our panels are already drawn at 15 feet tall, which is great. All right, let's go ahead and try to draw this in. A couple things you can do. One, which, I mean, always an option if you have no other resources to be able to do this. You could PDF import this drawing if you absolutely needed to. Another thing you could do is you could scale off of this detail here to kind of get a feel for what that's going to look like, and we're going to draw it to the best of our ability. But most of what's on there, we're not really going to trying to find the word. We're not going to dimension or tag all of that because none of that there is part of our scope, but our panels are going to kind of go into that cove a little bit. So we do need to make sure that we're showing it accurately in that sense. So I think what I'm going to do is use the scale method here because this is a decently sized drawing at 3 inches equals a foot. And when you import something, usually the lines don't always connect. You get some weird details that happen and some goofiness that doesn't always work out. So I'm going to set my scale at 3 inches equals a foot to match the architectural drawing. Set my scale factor. I might even go down to a 32nd. Well, no, I'll go down to a 16th here. And we're going to try to figure out a couple things. One, we know a couple of the dimensions that are already here. But two, I kind of need to know. I mean, I'm guessing this is 5/8 because that's drywall. Drywall is usually measured at 5/8 thick. If I go from there down, that's an inch and an eighth, which I can deal with that. That's not a big deal. This here is about a 16th inch thick. It's a bent piece of metal, it looks like. 39-degree Pittcon. Okay, so it's a part of the light fixture, but it's essentially like a bent piece of metal that's like a shade in a way, or like a diffuser to keep the light from pointing straight down at people or being able to see the light fixture. They're calling that to be 39 degrees, which would mean that like the angle from, I mean, I could maybe pull the angular dimension on it here too, but it should be about 39 degrees. Sometimes it's hard to do the angular dimension in Bluebeam, but you can see that it's right about there. So that checks out. Okay, so let's start drawing this little corner detail in as best we can. So let's start over in our details area and we'll start dropping this in. So let's start with the 6-inch dimension here. So we have a 6-inch dimension right there. That's to represent the gap between there and there. I need to know a couple things. One, our ceiling height changes from 15 feet to 14'6", I think it was. Sorry, I need to go back and look. Oh, right there, 14'6". So we do know that. All right, and let's see. Just checking a couple things in my head, trying to think through this a little bit. 2A740. Oh, right here. View 2 is through the, okay, that doesn't really help much. Oh, that's 3 anyway. Where's 2 at? Oh, 2 is right here. Okay. Sorry, I was just checking this because I wanted to see what this detail kind of looked like on the outside of the room. When you're looking at the RCP, that would be right here. So these are the panels that go into that portal, and this is the gap here, and then this is the ceiling here. So portals, they're showing the gap at 5 inches here, which is fine. We can make that 5 inches there. I just didn't know that's what it was. And then the ceiling would start here. So that's the ceiling here, that ceiling there. Gap here at 5 inches, that's this dimension right here. And then there's the portal panels right there, which would be these guys right here. So kind of a lot to digest in a way, but yeah, we're going to kind of try to figure this out. So I guess first things first, let's go ahead and draw in, let's start with that first detail we looked at and try to work through this. All right, so they're giving us a dimension of 3 inches in height difference here, which we can work with for right now. I'll just set that 3 inches off to the side, which would be just this line here. So I went 6 inches across, 3 inches down, and I made this 3 inches, although that could be any dimension there because it's going to continue. All right, so from there, I guess to the where the ceiling, the drywall stops there at that opening, we need to find out what that is. So I'm going to be really careful in getting that dimension. It looks like it is about 7 inches tall. I probably rounded it a little bit, or I probably got a little bit messed up in my dimensioning when I pulled that, but it should be about 7 inches tall there. So that would be, oops, sorry, not there. That'd be here. Okay, so that's 7 inches in height right there, which is now representing this L shape right there. If you notice, there's a 2-inch dimension behind there, and it looks like this is practically in line with that. So what we're going to do is draw a line 2 inches back from here, and then 3 inches up from there, which is going to represent the top of this cove. Now, I'm not given a dimension from front to back of the cove up here, so I could try to scale that too and see what we get. Looks like 1'2" 7/16", which is going to be about 1'2.5" ish. Let's go with that for right now. So 1'2.5", that'd be 14.5 inches there. And then here there's a 6-inch dimension coming down from the top to the ledge where the light sits. So 6 inches down. And then here, although this is not the total height, we show that there's a 3-inch clear dimension from where the metal edge stops to the wall. So let's drop that in. All right, and then let's find out from the top of the metal down to, I guess, the bottom of the drywall. We're at 2 3/8. So offset that 2 3/8. That's going to be in, let's see. Oh, you know what? Hold on. I think I did this weird. So 6 inches down to there would be to there. Okay. And so I guess if I was to find out from there to the bottom of the drywall, I think that was the 1 3. Sorry, I got a lot of dimensions happening now. Gotta clean this up. Okay, so from the top of this plate to the bottom of the drywall is at 1 1/8. Okay, so that makes sense. So 1.125 or 1 1/8. I need to come down that 1 1/8 here. And then what I can do is find that measurement one more time. or 2 3/8. So now I can offset that line up to 0.375 or 2 3/8 from there. So that kind of gives you kind of like the outline of where we're about to work into here. This is 3 inches if I remember right. Right, okay. And from the corner roughly to where that goes, looks like that's about probably 3 inches, give or take a little bit. And again, I need to clean this up again because I'm getting too clustered in here. You know what I could probably do though is maybe go from like here to that corner. Looks like it's about 4 inches. And we know that this is a 39-degree angle. So if I draw a line here at 4 inches and then I place that line, whoops, redo that, a line at 4 inches and then place that line right at the corner of where that angle should go. So like that would be this corner here to where I just placed that line. What I'm going to do is, because I know that the dimension from here to here is 39 inches, what I can do is do the math to figure this out. So right now I have a line that's straight across. That would be like if I had a line right here going straight across here. And I need to angle this way. Well, you can do 180 for like a flat line all the way across and subtract the 39, and it should give you what the rotation should be. So if I do that, I should be able to rotate this line 141 degrees, and it should give me that 39-degree angle on the inside. So let's do that. We'll use the rotate command, highlight that line, click the endpoint here, and then we're going to tell it what that angle is going to be, which was our 141. All right, and you can kind of see that there's something goofy going on, and that's okay. That's because I need to move this down to here, for one. And then two, the other thing that I need to do as well is I need to play kind of a game of connect the dots here. So this goes away. We're going to fillet these lines together just like this to make that kind of angled piece like this. All right, and then what we're going to do is, we know this is about a 1/16 inch thick, so we're going to offset that line in. Well, hold on. Before we do that, let's go ahead and radius this corner here. If you're trying to find a radius in Bluebeam, there's an easy way to do it. The first thing you can do, like when you go into the radius tool, it's going to ask you, like, the radius tool is not very good in Bluebeam at first glance. Like, it's going to ask you to kind of draw the circle. There's a different tool on top of that though. If you go to where it says radius and click the drop down, you can go to 3-point radius and you can grab 3 points on a curve, and it'll give you roughly what that radius should be. It may be slightly off, but it looks like we're dealing with 1/8 of an inch. So then let's fillet this corner together using a radius of 0.125. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect all these lines together as a polyline. So what I'm going to do is use join and join all these lines together to do that. We can offset those lines in now 1/16 of an inch. And then that's going to represent this sort of like angled piece that they have built here for this light. I'm going to also connect these dots as well, since we're doing that here. Join and join. Perfect. One thing that I did notice is that although this is a 39-degree angle, there is still, like, my 6-inch dimension is slightly off. So I think what I need to do is I need to kind of find out, if this wasn't radius, I need to find out, okay, well, where would these 2 points meet for starters? So right there where those 2 points meet. And then I'm going to use the stretch command to shrink this light cove so that it's perfectly 6 inches here, like what's drawn here. So recapping on the stretch command, again, it's a tough one to learn. Don't kick yourself too hard if you don't get it right away. Stretch is a just a little bit difficult. So you'll start that command, and when it does, it'll ask you to select objects, in which case you're not wanting to necessarily click on objects and select them that way. What you're going to want to do is you're really going to want to highlight what objects you want to stretch or move. And when I do that, I got to be careful because like as I select these objects, I want to make sure that this 6-inch line is completely covered. But I'm selecting halfway through this line here because I want to shrink that line. Any line that's completely boxed in, for example, like right now, this line right here, that's completely boxed in. So that's not going to shrink at all. What's going to happen is that line is going to move as I shrink the other lines that are half selected. So it's kind of hard to understand at first, but if you play around with it for a little bit, you'll definitely get the hang of it. So really what you want to do is you always want to start in the bottom right corner of the object that you're trying to stretch. And you're going to want to move up to the top left corner. And as you notice, one other thing that I like to do too is select outside of that area in the blank space, because trying to get that just spot on, like trying to click this point and move up to here is probably not realistic, and it's going to waste time doing it. So it's better to go about it this way, where you kind of just select all of those lines all together, and you click outside of the area that you're trying to select, kind of like this. Anyway, so once you have that done, hit enter, and then it's going to ask you to select a base point, in which I'm just going to grab this point here. And as I move my cursor, you can see what's happening is it's kind of stretching that whole entire object, but keeping the objects here on the right side intact. The reason I'm doing this, again, I want to make sure that this is lined up with that 6-inch dimension, like where the corners would meet. That way, that 6-inch clear is actually accurate to what what we have drawn here. Okay, so moving on now from there, we want to show a couple things. One, I have this little plate here, which I'm not 100% sure exactly what that material is. Most likely it's just some kind of blocking that's up there in the ceiling. And so I need to find out one, thickness of that material. Looks like about a 1/2 inch thick. Makes sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and offset that down a 1/2 inch. Just like this. And then the rest of that should be about 5/8, which will be the thickness of the drywall. So 0.5625. Perfect. All right, cool. These two lines are going to extend to the inside of our angle. So we're going to use the extend command to do that. And then they're going to extend past this a certain amount. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to cut this off. I don't need to show the entire thing of what's happening over there, just enough to show the cove and the materials that are going into that cove. And I also need to draw a line here for the drywall as well. Okay, now that I got that, our cove is starting to look like what it's supposed to. That's great. We still need to draw the light in. And we also still need to, well, still detail out a little bit more of this, but that's fine. So let's get the light in first, and then we will work through the rest of it. So the light here appears, let's see if I dimension this. I mean, if this is the correct light fixture that they're using, it's about 1 1/8 diameter. So what I'm going to do is just take an 1 1/8 diameter circle, and I'm going to place that right about the center of where this is shown here. So 1.125 diameter, drop that in right about here. It's centered between the angle here and between here. All right, and then that's going to come down to about here. And I'll raise it up just a little bit because it does, oh, I guess it does want to be in line with the top of that angle. So it looks like it anyway. So I'm going to actually lower that to be about there. All right, so this is kind of representing the light a little bit. I can then take these lines that are here, and I know that there's a gap here specifically for, it looks like air return. No big deal, but I'm going to offset some of these lines out. The thickness of the drywall, which should be 5/8 or 0.625. And we're going to do that here. We're going to do that here and here and all the way around this whole opening, just to match what's drawn here. Then we're going to play connect the dots. We'll fill it, radius 0, and we will close all these corners up. Then, before we call that, I do need to delete or shrink this line. I could either trim it, I could stretch it, I could do a couple different things. This is going to close off here. And if I really wanted to go crazy with it, I could put the metal studs in there too. But for right now, this is kind of like what that detail is going to look like at that corner. And I just want to make sure that that's correct with what we've got here on our drawing. They have a couple of dimensions here. This says BO pop-up and BO ceiling. So I don't know if that's what they necessarily call these out to be. No, not really. They don't really give you the BO pop-up dimension there. But I mean, we can kind of see what's happening though. So looking at the drawing here, let's go ahead and I just want to pull a quick measurement to test something. Changing my scale to match this elevation view, that's 3/8 equals a foot. If I go to that and I pull the scale from there, let's go ahead and see what they have this drawn at from the top of that ceiling to the floor. 14'6", so that's 14.5 feet. And then this is probably the 15. Yeah, okay, that would be about 15. Okay, I just wanted to re-verify that a little bit because I was a little bit confused for a second, wondering if maybe, because like this detail here definitely shows something slightly different. As you can see, there's like a ceiling here that's a little bit lower, whereas ours currently, I actually don't think that we have that. So maybe that was kind of a waste for us to draw it, but just making sure. Yeah, they don't really have that here. And so that's fine. We don't really need that part of it. What we'll do is I'll probably just leave it as, well, I'll remove that too. And again, just to make sure, they're showing 6 inches clear here. So I think what I'm going to do is, probably shouldn't have deleted that so soon. I'm going to connect these dots here, just like that. Draw a line at 6 inches here to show what that would be. And then I can then accurately place this on the drawing where I need to put it. So right now what I'm going to do is kind of leave that in the details area, but I'm going to use the copy command and I'm going to make a copy of it up by my elevation views up here. Okay, and then let's take a look at, let me unsplit this if I can. Might have to just close that. Okay, so looking back at our elevation view from the architect, you can clearly see that there is this angled piece, and then it kind of hooks back and goes into that portal. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take this detail that we have here, and we're going to place that exactly where they show it on their end over here. So looking at that, I just use the copy command, and it's going to go roughly about here. Let's make sure that our ceiling heights are in the correct place. So that 14'6" should be in line with the drywall there. Okay, and then this one actually is a little bit smaller, which is weird because they had a clear dimension on it, but that's okay. We'll just shrink it up. I'm going to use the stretch command to do that. So bottom right corner, top left corner, and then I'm going to bring this down to about, oh, hold on a minute. Bring that down like this, sorry, to there. And I guess maybe I don't really need those lines. I had them in there because I thought I was going to need them, but this ended up being more of a mess than anything else. So, okay. So that corner is kind of drawn in the way that it should look. We're going to mirror this over to the other side of the elevator lobby. So we're going to use the mirror command to do that. We'll mirror that information, and we're going to go shift right click, and we're going to go mid between 2 points from that corner to should be this corner here, like that. Okay, so now that we have that, you can see here that this ceiling does go across and it cuts over to the top of our panel, so we're going to match that here. And I'm just going to kind of connect these dots, just like we have been doing. I'll probably actually just use the extend command to do this, so that'd be a little bit easier and a little bit less us moving lines around manually like that. So I'm using extend. I'm going to extend those lines over to the right. Okay, so the last thing I want to check out too is I need to see if our panels extend into this light cove, because when you're looking at the reflected ceiling plan, you can see that light cove goes all the way around the room. Now, I don't believe that our panels go into that. Actually, what I really think is happening here is that the panels most likely actually stop at the lower ceiling. But they do show a couple kind of confusing details here for that. So back on 711, well, I guess the 240 view that we looked at here, they kind of show one thing, and then over here they kind of show a different thing. Now I'm kind of thinking this is probably more accurate to the elevator lobby because one, this does say elevator lobby on it. So I know this is a specific detail to that room, but this one here doesn't really say elevator lobby. And in fact, it's got dimensions that conflict with what's shown on the elevator lobby drawing for the elevation and the RCP. So as much as I would love to use this detail, I am going to kind of use it as a reference and kind of refer to the detail that's down below. So that would be this detail here, view number 2, which when you're looking at the reflected ceiling plan, just so you have a little bit of clarification on where that's coming from, view 2 is a section that cuts through this area here. And so what they're saying with that is that this is the light pocket here that goes all the way around the room. For some reason they have it at 5 inches here, but I noticed that there's like a panel or something here in the way. And so I'm pretty sure it goes to 6 inches, and it would be 6 inches if you measured from that corner to that actual wall there. But anyway, where I was kind of going with that is that since we know that's the light pocket going around the room on the outside border, because of all the lines going on here, it does make it confusing, but I'm going to say that that is the light pocket there. And now that we know that, if we go back to 740 view 2, or 741 view 2, I'm sorry, we can kind of see what is happening with that. Oh no, I'm got it all mixed up now. It should be 740 view 2. Yeah, duh. 740 view 2. All right. So what they show here is definitely more accurate. So because of that, it's going to be confusing to do what they did in their elevation view. They showed the ceiling here like this, and you cannot actually see the panels beyond. But if you think about it, these panels are going into that light cove, kind of like what's shown here. Is that light cove stops before the wall hits and the panels hit. And those panels need to go somewhere, so they're going to go into that light pocket just like this. Now, one thing that I know because it's not shown here is that because the light pocket and the ceiling are all by others, what I would like to do first things first is put it on the existing layer because that'll be signifying that it is not by onsite. But then for 2, what I would also like to do is make these hidden lines because I want to show our panels beyond without blocking them from view. So I'm going to go into my properties pane and I'm going to select hidden 2 for the line type. Then from there, I actually don't need that red line anymore. That was to represent the ceiling height. Now that I have that in the drawing, it's not important anymore. I can delete that. Actually, I don't really need that anymore either. That's kind of now no longer needed. But I do need to copy these gray lines from this elevator lobby elevation to this elevator lobby elevation. And our elevator lobby should not have changed in width here. And so because of that, what I can do is I can actually find the midpoint here and copy and paste that over there. So I'm going to go shift right click, mid between 2 points, and go from far front to far back of my elevator lobby, and then do the same thing over here. So from far front to far back of my elevator lobby, and that should do a very good job of representing the ceiling in this room. Again, that ceiling is by somebody else, grayed out, hidden lined. It doesn't really matter. We're not dimensioning or anything to it. I just need to show that it's up there for the installer so they know that there's something to look for when they go into that room. All right, so a couple other things we want to do. We want to throw in the floor and the ceiling hatch now. Floor and the ceiling hatch. Floor hatch is going to be much easier in this case because it's flat. The ceiling hatch is going to be a little bit more complicated than what we've messed with before, and that's okay. So I'm dropping in the floor hatch first. Once I've done that, then what I want to do, because you can see I have this kind of complex shape that I need to hatch. So the hatch block for the wall, floor, and ceiling does an okay job of this, but not like to what we need for this type of deal. So what I want to do for this thing is I'm going to actually trace out the ceiling with a polyline, and then I'm going to offset the polyline 2 inches out, then close the polyline and then hatch it with my tool palette hatch for walls, floors, and ceilings here. So let's start by the polyline. You can either type in polyline or pline. It'll start the polyline command, and then all you got to do is kind of just trace over what you've got here. We're going to go around this room, over to here, down to here, and across to here. All right, now that you've got that, you can see if I click on it, it's one solid line. Then I'm going to use the offset command and offset that line 2 inches up, like this. All right, and then I'm going to close the polyline by throwing in a couple of extra lines at the end to cap it off. And the last step that I want to do is I want to hatch it. So we're going to go into our hatching tool palette, and we're going to drag and drop that in. Last thing you're going to do is just like the floor hatch, you don't really need the outside lines. In fact, I would suggest deleting them like I just did there, just to show that there is a ceiling there, but it doesn't need to like be the thickness of the ceiling or anything. It's just to represent that it does exist up there. All right, then we're going to mirror that over to this side. You can use the mirror command for that. We'll highlight that hatching, hit enter, hold down shift, right click, mid between 2 points. And we are going to go up from that endpoint to this endpoint, and then no to erasing source objects. All right, well, how about that? And as long as your walls match up from left to right of your elevator lobby, then you should have no issues there. So everything's all nice and tidy and lined up. All right, so elevation view wise, we're doing really good. I think we've got the majority of what we need here. In fact, I'd say like we are probably about done with those. One thing I want to add still, even though this isn't really part of our scope, is I do kind of want to throw those light fixtures in for the call lanterns. And I'm going to throw in a elevator push button for the elevator call buttons there. That occurs on both sides of the elevator lobby. So we'll probably add those in, and then we'll stop this video here. And then the next video, we will be looking at the section views following this. So let's look at this light. They call it out to be EQ06. So first things first, let's see if we can find EQ06 in the architectural drawings. If we can't find it, we'll scale it and we'll draw it to the best of our ability. But what you want to do is go into, sorry, I got to pull up the architectural folder again. I must have closed it. Okay, here we go. Proscenium drawings. Come on, architecturals. And we're going to be looking for anything that's labeled schedules or equipment schedules or anything of that nature. There will likely be one in here. And if we can't find it, like I said, worst case scenario, we might have to scale it. But usually they'll include it as part of their architectural drawing set. Looks like it's the third drawing down from the top. Let's open that up and see what we've got here for EQ6. There's the EQs over here for equipment and appliance schedule. EQ6 is a temporary elevator call lantern. I don't know what TBC is, but it sounds like to be coordinated probably. And so it sounds like they don't actually have one spec'd out just yet, which is fine. It doesn't really matter as long as we kind of sketch in what we're going to expect to see. I mean, I'm going to use what the architectural shows to do that. So let's go back to our CAD file and back to their elevation view and kind of piece this one together. So they give us some dimensions to work off of. They say that this light should be 8 inches from the top of the elevator jamb to the light fixture itself. We can also set our scale factor here to 3/8 equals a foot, and then check to see what the diameter of this light fixture is. It looks like about 7¼ kind of an oddball dimension, but that's all right. So let's draw that in. We're going to go up to the top and we're going to go center diameter for circle. And we're going to draw it at 7¼ 7.25. And then we're going to take the center of that circle using the move command, and we're going to line it up with the center of our elevator here. And then we're going to go up 8 inches from there, which kind of represents exactly where they show it there. Now, last thing we want to do is we want to copy this over so that it matches up with all the other elevators. So I'm using the center point of the elevator doors. And just to verify, each elevator should have its own call lantern, but just make sure on the architecturals that's what they have there. Looks like that is the case, and they actually do show it centered on the door, so that's perfect. Last thing here for this is we have a we did the call lanterns. These are the call buttons for the elevator. They are called as EQ08, but kind of going back to the equipment schedule we just looked at, the equipment for the elevator lobby is all temporary and to be coordinated at TBC. So that means that they actually don't have a spec for that either. Now, if that's the case, that's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to match this to the best of our ability and try to make it look right. So based on what they've got here, let's make sure the scale factor is set to 3/8 equals a foot. Looks like we've got that set there. Now let's go ahead and try to pull some dimensions on this call box and see what we've got. So there to there is 1'5". There to there is 7 inches. Okay, so let's start by drawing that rectangle in. So 7 inches wide by 1'5". Once we've got that, we are dealing with 5 by 17, or sorry, 7 by 17. We can throw the buttons on there too, just to represent what those are going to look like. Looks like that's about 2.5 inches up, and these are about, geez, I can't even see that one. About, well, we'll just say 5/16. So probably about like 1¼ diameter. All right, so let's do a 1¼ diameter for the button. We'll move it to be 2.5 from the bottom to the center of the button. And then same here, 2.5, I think is probably fair. I could just check it to make sure because I didn't do that yet. So I want to be fair about that in case it is different. Actually, it's about 3 inches, so we need to move that up another 1/2 inch. Crazy. Okay, so those are call buttons. If I wanted to get fancier with it, I could put a little triangle in there too. I mean, 2, 3 sides inscribed in circles. So we'll kind of just, drop one in like that, mirror that, boop, boop, just like this. So we got our buttons up and down. I'm going to highlight that whole thing as well as all these lanterns and put them on the existing layer because all of this will be by others. Actually, all these lines here are. So let's do that. Put them on the existing layer. And one thing I'm going to do also is group this because I have a lot of different lines going on here. I need to use the group command here to put this all together so it's one solid piece instead of a bunch of lines. Then we're going to go ahead and get this figured out. So it's 3'6" from the center of this call button plate to the floor. And it's also centered between the doors here. So let's go ahead and put that in where it needs to go. Actually, probably a better way to do this would be to use the move command, hold down shift, right click, mid between 2 points, go center to center, or corner to corner, which will give me the dead center. And then I can place that, holding shift and right click again, mid between 2 points, and I can kind of drop that in right here. So now the middle of that plate is in line with the floor and it's centered on this wall here. I need to move this up 3'6". So that'd be 42 inches off the floor. And then I need to trim my panels around it, which will be done in the field anyway. But yeah, we're going to show that the panels will be trimmed around this call button though. All right. And then I'm sure we have a call button on the other side of the elevator lobby too. So we need to also incorporate that over there too. Let's copy this over. Again, we are still within a group, so we're good there. We're going to do the same thing we just did. We're going to use the move command, shift right click, mid between 2 points, go from there to there. And then we are going to line this up with the center between these two doors. And then move that up that 42 inches or 3'6". And then again, we're going to trim those lines to there, and then delete the excess that's in the middle. That will all occur in the field. We'll be trimming all that around or cutting all those panels around these buttons when we get to the install portion of the project. All right. So, yeah, really, we're looking pretty good. There's not a lot more to go here. I got to do some cleanup work as far as like maybe putting these on the existing layer too, because this is a trim piece that's by somebody else that goes around the elevator opening. I'm going to do that. I'm probably going to just go through all my reveals and make sure I trimmed all my lines properly to make sure that everything looks good there. And then in the next video installment, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the section views and the detail views through these elevators or elevator lobby panels. So that'll be kind of a nice treat there too, because that'll be kind of fun. It'll be something new that we haven't really messed with yet. These are going to be a little bit more high-end detailed sections than what we saw before when we were doing the panels on the columns in the elevator, or sorry, the walls outside the restroom in the last two video series that we did for panels. But really, this isn't too bad. So elevation views, I would consider these practically done. I think there's a couple things I want to clean up first, but like for the most part, I'm thinking these are looking really good. I'm going to move that line. That's what I was looking for. I had a reveal that kind of extended down that didn't need to. I think the same goes for this side too. But I'm really happy with how these turned out. And what we did up to this point is going to set us up for success, because now what we can do is use our elevation views and our plan view if we need to get information to use construction lines and draw out our section views in the next video. So that'll be kind of the main focus in the next one, and hopefully we'll get that wrapped up there and we can move on to the next subject of islands and tables and drywall framing. So we'll stop this one here, and then we'll continue on tomorrow with the section views through these elevators or elevator lobby panels.